A piercing siren echoed through the night, slicing through the thick darkness of Vanak. Shirin's heart raced, a relentless drum of fear and hope. The cold metal of her pistol nestled against her thigh felt heavy, a stark reminder of the gravity of their choice. The air was thick with smoke, the acrid scent of burning tires lingering from the streets. She motioned for her sisters, each face a mix of determination and dread. In the distance, a guard barked orders, the sound muffled yet sharp against the pounding in her ears. They were trained to follow orders, to fight for the regime. But tonight was different. Tonight, the flickering streetlights cast shadows of freedom on their faces. Shirin glanced at the others, their eyes wide, breaths shallow. This was their moment. The whispers of Azadi echoed in her mind, a call to the life they yearned for. The narrow street wound through the heart of their childhood neighborhood like a forgotten ribbon, bordered by worn stone walls and flickering street lamps. Each evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant Alborz mountains, the air would fill with the comforting scent of freshly baked nani sangak. The warm, yeasty aroma drifted from the small, family-owned bakery just a few doors down. The bakery was a modest building, its wooden sign creaking in the gentle breeze, displaying hand-painted letters fading with time. Every morning, Shirin and her sisters would race down the cracked pavement, giggles escaping their lips, eager to be the first to reach the bakery. The smell of the hot naan was irresistible, wrapping around them like a warm blanket. As they pushed through the door, the bell chimed softly above, announcing their arrival. Inside, the warmth enveloped them, the walls adorned with photographs of the baker's family, smiling with flour-dusted faces. "Salam, what can I get for you today?" the baker would ask, his hands dusted with flour, a twinkle in his eyes. Shirin would peer over the counter, eyes wide. "1, nan-e sangak, please." The baker would nod, expertly grabbing a loaf from the stone oven, the heat radiating toward them like a gentle embrace. The crust was golden brown, crackling as he sliced it. "Careful, it's hot," he would warn, handing it over with a smile that seemed to warm the entire room. Outside, the street buzzed with life. Vendors shouted their wares, selling everything from crisp sabzi to fresh fruits piled high in woven baskets. Children played tag, their laughter echoing off the walls, a symphony of innocence surrounding them. As she walked back home, the warm naan clutched in her hands, Shirin would wave to the neighbors, each familiar face a piece of her childhood tapestry. At home, the kitchen was the heart of their small apartment. The aroma of spices simmering in a pot filled the air, inviting and comforting. Her mother, dressed in a simple chador, moved gracefully between the stove and the table, her hands deftly chopping vegetables for koresht. The sound of sizzling oil filled the room, mingling with the laughter of her younger siblings playing nearby. "Shirin, can you set the table?" her mother would call, her voice soft yet firm. "Of course, Mama," Shirin would reply, rushing to grab the chipped plates from the cupboard. The table was small, yet it felt grand when adorned with a colorful array of homemade dishes. The sight of koreshte fesenjan, rich and dark, alongside fluffy saffron rice was a feast for the eyes. Shirin's heart swelled with pride each time they gathered around the table, the warmth of family wrapping around them like a cocoon. As they ate, stories flowed as freely as the laughter. Her father would recount tales from his youth in Tehran, each word painted with the vibrancy of his memories. "Back in my day," he would start, and the children would lean in, eyes wide with wonder. He shared his dreams for the future, his hopes woven into each story. They savored every bite, the flavors exploding in their mouths. The tadig was always the highlight, the crispy golden layer at the bottom of the pot, fought over with playful shoves and laughter. Shirin cherished these moments, the sense of belonging wrapping around her like a warm hug. After dinner, the family would gather in the living room, the low hum of life outside filtering through the open window. Her mother would bring out old family albums, dusting them off like treasure. "Look at this one," she would exclaim, pointing to a picture of Shirin as a toddler, her cheeks stuffed with cake during her birthday. Each photograph told a story, a glimpse into their lives filled with love and happiness. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated their faces as they shared memories. The sound of Shahram Nazari's voice floated through the air, playing softly from the radio in the corner. They'd listen to the melodies, their feet tapping along to the rhythm. Outside, the street continued to pulse with life. The neighbor's cat lounged lazily on the warm concrete, stretching as the sun began its descent. The sound of a daska echoed faintly from a nearby gathering, where voices sang in harmony, woven with hopes and dreams. Shirin watched from the window, her heart swelling with a sense of unity. The next morning would find them in a similar routine. Early risers, sleepy eyes still heavy with dreams. The same race to the bakery, the intoxicating smell of naan filling the air once again. The baker greeted them with a smile, and they'd chatter about their plans for the day, the joys of childhood bubbling to the surface. In the afternoons, they'd gather in the local park, a patch of green surrounded by tall buildings. The swings creaked as they soared high, laughter punctuating the air like music notes. Shirin would push her younger sister, the thrill of the wind making them feel alive. "Higher! Push me higher!" she'd shout, her voice ringing out. The park smelled of damp grass and blooming flowers, the colors vibrant under the sun. Vendors strolled by with carts full of delicious treats, selling bastani and saffron ice cream. The children would beg for a taste, their faces sticky with melted sweetness. As the day waned, they'd make their way back home, tired yet content. The street lamps flickered to life, casting shadows that danced on the pavement. Shirin would often glance back at the park, a bittersweet longing in her heart, wishing to stay in the innocence forever. Evenings would find them on the balcony, the warm breeze carrying the sounds of the neighborhood, laughter, the clinking of dishes, and distant music. They would sit together, stars emerging in the velvet sky. Shirin's father would tell bedtime stories, weaving tales of heroes and legends. "Yek Ruse, a brave warrior saved his village," he would begin, eyes sparkling. The children would huddle closer, enraptured by his words. Each tale ignited their imaginations, filling their dreams with courage and adventure. And then, the days would blend into weeks, each moment a thread in the fabric of their lives. The routine became a reliable rhythm, a comforting heartbeat amid the noise of the world outside. But in the quiet of their home, they were safe, cocooned in the love of family and the simplicity of life. The street continued to breathe around them, a living entity with stories of its own to tell, always welcoming and familiar. As seasons changed, so did the flavors of their meals. In spring, fresh herbs adorned the table, their vibrant green whispering of new beginnings. Summer brought juicy peaches, the sweetness a reminder of sunlit days. Autumn introduced hearty stews, simmering slowly, filling the air with warmth. Winter? That was for Dizi and Feisanjan, the rich stews that brought everyone together in the coziness of their home. Every holiday brought its own excitement. Yalda was a festival of colors and flavors, with pomegranates and nuts laid out in abundance. They would gather around the table, sharing poetry and stories late into the night, hearts warmed by the glow of candles. When winter finally settled in, Shirin felt the chill seep into her bones. They would sit bundled together, sipping hot chai spiced with cardamom, the steam curling upwards like whispers of warmth. Her father would tell stories of his youth, igniting a sense of nostalgia. "Those were different times," he would say, eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the candle. Each moment was a testament to the mundane beauty of their lives, the familiar sounds, the comforting smells, the laughter that echoed in their home. They were like stars in the night sky, each one twinkling with memories, never far from the other. And through it all, the street remained a constant, an unchanging presence, a backdrop to their lives. Its stones had witnessed their joy, their laughter, and their tears. As Shirin looked back on those days, she felt a deep ache, a longing for the simplicity, the safety of their childhood street, the warmth of family dinners, the enchanting smell of nane sangak. All just memories now, etched into her heart forever. The rustling leaves seemed to whisper secrets. It was late at night, and the stillness hung thick in the air, almost suffocating. Shirin stood at the window, her heart racing in her chest. Heavy clouds cloaked the moon, casting shadows that danced over the familiar streets of Ekbatan. All the comfort of home felt like an echo, fading in the distance. Then, the sound shattered the peace. A sharp knock at the door, loud and menacing. It echoed through the hallways, sending a shockwave of fear coursing through her. Her heart dropped. The basage, the ergs. She had heard whispers of raids, of dissenters being captured in the dead of night. Who could it be? Her sister Layla asked, eyes wide as she clutched her arm. "Stay quiet," Shirin whispered, her voice barely audible. The tension in the air thickened like fog. They exchanged glances, an unspoken understanding passing between them. This was not about them anymore. This was about survival. Every breath felt heavy, laden with fear and uncertainty. Shirin pressed her ear against the door, straining to listen. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy boots against concrete. The sound crawled under her skin, igniting a primal instinct to run. Adrenaline surged through her. She stepped back, heart pounding like a war drum. The darkness of the hallway felt like a predator, waiting to pounce. "Shirin," Layla said, her voice trembling. "What do we do?" "Shh," she hissed, glancing back at her sister. "We need to find a way out. Now." The knocking resumed, louder this time, as if demanding entry. Shirin's fingers shook as she grabbed her hijab, wrapping it tightly around her head. The fabric felt scratchy against her skin, a reminder of her suffocating reality. She turned to Layla, who was pale, her breath shallow and quick. "Go to the back," Shirin instructed, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling in her mind. "I'll check the front." Layla nodded, fear flashing in her eyes. She darted toward the kitchen, silent as a shadow. Shirin took a deep breath, the scent of jasmine from the garden drifting in through the window. It felt comforting, yet surreal. "Open up!" The voice was gruff, punctuated by a thud against the door that sent shivers down her spine. Shirin's heart raced faster. She tiptoed toward the door. Each step felt like a lifetime. She had to act. She pressed her palms flat against the cold surface of the door, feeling the vibrations of the pounding through her body. "Open up! We know you're in there!" The voice was menacing, and it clawed at her insides. Suddenly, the door rattled as if someone had slammed their shoulder into it. Panic surged through her veins. She turned around, searching for a way out. The kitchen was dark, shadows flickering as Layla moved quietly, her eyes wide with fear. "Is there another way?" Layla whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Shirin's mind raced. The window. They could escape through the back, but it was on the second floor. The thought of climbing down sent a chill through her. What if they were caught? "Let's go!" Shirin hissed, grabbing Layla's hand. They moved like shadows through the darkened hallway, each footstep measured and cautious. Her heart thudded louder, each beat a reminder of their fragility. With shaky hands, Shirin pushed open the kitchen window, the cool night air rushing in like a tidal wave. It smelled of fresh earth and distant rain, so close yet so far from their reality. She glanced outside. The drop was steep, but they had no choice. "Can you make it?" Shirin asked, looking into her sister's frightened eyes. "I have to," Layla whispered, determination creeping into her voice. Shirin climbed through first, feeling the rough edges of the window frame against her skin. She paused for a moment, taking in the world outside. The street lay quiet, illuminated by the flickering streetlights. It was beautiful, yet terrifying. Layla followed, her movements quick and frantic. They landed in the garden, the grass cool against their bare feet. Shirin could feel her pulse in her throat, a wild thrum of fear and anticipation. "Run!" she whispered urgently. Together they dashed toward the back gate, their hearts hammering as they moved through the shadows. The sound of boots echoed again, closer now, like thunder rumbling in the distance. "Over there!" Layla pointed toward the narrow alley between the houses. They squeezed into the cramped space, the walls closing in around them. The air was thick, smelling of damp concrete and something sharp, like rust. Shirin pressed her back against the wall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "We have to keep going." Layla tugged at her hand, pulling her further into the darkness. They stumbled through the alley, every sound magnified. The clinking of metal, the rustling of leaves. Shirin's senses were heightened, every nerve ending alive with fear. And then, a sharp shout pierced the air, freezing them in their tracks. "Stop! In the name of the Irgi!" Shirin felt her stomach drop. It was too close. They had to move. "Run!" Shirin shouted, breaking the spell. They bolted forward, adrenaline pushing them faster than they thought possible. The alley narrowed, the walls closing in. She could feel Layla beside her, matching her pace, their breaths mingling in the cold air. The world around them blurred, a whirlwind of shadows and sounds. The distant hum of the city, the rustle of night creatures, the pounding of their hearts. They burst out of the alley, the street stretching before them like a lifeline. Shirin glanced back only once, catching a glimpse of figures emerging from the shadows. Their uniforms shone under the streetlights, stark and menacing. "Keep moving," she urged. They sprinted across the street, the pavement cold beneath their feet. The world felt surreal, every sound amplified, dragging them deeper into panic. They passed familiar shops, the bakery where they once bought warm sangak, now a distant memory. "Where do we go?" Layla gasped, desperation seeping into her voice. "Follow me." Shirin pulled her toward a small park, its trees casting long shadows. The night air filled with the scent of damp grass and the faint smell of fried kebab. The park was empty, save for a few stray cats darting between the bushes. They ducked behind a large tree, hearts racing, listening intently. The night was alive with sounds, but the most terrifying was the distant shouts growing louder. "There's no turning back now," Shirin whispered, the gravity of their reality settling over them like a heavy blanket. Layla nodded, fear etched on her face. "What do we do? We have to find a way across the border." Shirin's mind raced. They had prepared for this, but the reality felt different, more urgent, more terrifying. The distant sounds of boots marching echoed through the night. It was a countdown. Every second felt like an eternity. Shirin clenched her fists, feeling the rough bark of the tree against her palms. "Are they coming?" Layla's voice trembled. "Shh," Shirin hissed, straining to listen. The shouts grew closer. They crouched lower, hearts racing, the branches scratching against their skin. "Go back to your homes!" a voice thundered. The fear gripped Shirin like a vice. There was no time left. They needed to move. But where? Every choice felt like a gamble, the stakes too high. "Come on!" Shirin grabbed Layla's hand, urgency burning in her veins. They slipped from behind the tree, eyes scanning the darkness. The world outside felt different now, dangerous and alive. Every shadow seemed to pulse with anxiety. They bolted toward the street, but the weight of dread hung over them, urging them to hurry. "Which way?" Layla gasped. "Anywhere but here," Shirin shouted, her voice raw with fear. They sprinted down the street, desperation fueling their every step. Shirin glanced back, catching a glimpse of figures in the distance moving with purpose. "Keep running," she urged, pushing Layla forward. The world blurred around them, a chaotic dance of shadows and fear. They turned a corner, the familiar sights of their childhood fading behind them. This was not the game they used to play. The stakes were real, and the danger felt palpable. "Where's the border?" Layla cried, panic lacing her voice. "Just keep going!" Shirin pulled her sister along, heart pounding in time with their footsteps. Every sound amplified in the chilling air. The distant sirens began to wail, a haunting melody that echoed through their bones. They had crossed a line, and now they were being hunted. The streetlights cast harsh shadows, illuminating the path ahead. Shirin's breath came in short gasps, each inhalation filled with the scent of fear and freedom. But freedom felt so far away, like a mirage on the horizon. "Shirin!" Layla's voice broke through the haze. "Don't stop," Shirin urged, her heart racing. They were running out of time, their escape slipping through their fingers like sand. The night was alive with tension, every moment stretching into eternity. But they had no choice. They would either break free or be captured. Every second brought them closer to the edge, and there was no turning back now. The world was closing in, shadows creeping forward. But Shirin didn't look back. She couldn't. The night was their only ally, and with it, they would fight for their lives. They ran, but the adrenaline couldn't drown out the creeping thoughts. Shirin's mind was a storm. Each step felt like a betrayal of everything she had ever known. The ideals she'd sworn to uphold now felt like chains, dragging her into darkness. The Vatan she had been taught to love, to protect, was suddenly a void, echoing with the screams of those who dared to dissent. The streets of Tehran blurred into a swirl of memories and regrets. She should feel proud, right? A soldier of the Irgur, a protector of the faith. But now, everything felt tainted. It was as if the very ground beneath her feet had shifted, revealing a chasm of lies. Was she fighting for liberation? Or was she simply a pawn in a game she couldn't comprehend? A wave of nausea surged through her. She stumbled, leaning against the rough wall of a dilapidated building. The bricks were cold, and the air reeked of smoke and despair. Shirin pressed her palm against her forehead, trying to dispel the foggy confusion clouding her thoughts. "Coda," she whispered to herself, but even that felt hollow. Layla's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. "Shirin, are you okay? Just give me a moment." Her voice cracked. The weight of her reality pressed down on her chest, and every breath felt like a betrayal to the life she had known. How could she even look at Layla, knowing that everything she believed in was a mirage? The screams of the past echoed in her head, death to the enemies of the regime. Those chants had once felt powerful, invigorating. Now, they were nothing but mocking echoes of her indoctrination. The fear that had been so ingrained in her, drilled into her, was crumbling. Shirin felt exposed, stripped of her armor, standing in the harsh light of a truth she had no choice but to face. "Are you with me?" Layla's eyes searched Shirin's face, but she couldn't find the strength to meet her sister's gaze. "Do you believe it?" Shirin's voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you believe in any of this?" "What do you mean?" Layla blinked, confusion spreading across her features. "The Islamic Republic, the promises, the sacrifices we made." Each word tasted bitter on her tongue. "We're taught to hate. But what if it's all a lie? What if we've been wrong?" Layla stepped back, her breath hitching. "You can't think that. They'll kill us for thinking like this." "Maybe they already have," Shirin replied, a cold realization settling over her. "What's the point of fleeing if we're running from shadows? What if we're just repeating the same mistakes?" The distant sounds of sirens pierced the air. Every wail felt like a reminder of the chains she had worn for so long. She could almost hear the Bazaj chanting, their fervor relentless, their loyalty unquestioned. But now, all that seemed like a cruel joke, a specter haunting her every thought. Shirin felt the walls closing in, the world narrowing to a pinprick of light. Each thought spiraled into paranoia. Were they being followed? Did the Irgai already know? The shadows danced at the corners of her vision. She could almost feel the cold breath of the guards on her neck, hot with rage, ready to claim her for her doubts. "What if they're watching us?" Layla whispered, her face pale. "What if they know we're defecting?" Shirin's heart raced, a drumbeat of fear. "They can't see us. We're ghosts in this night." But the words felt weak, a fragile shield against the onslaught of dread. The truth was unraveling her from the inside, the beliefs she had clung to becoming nothing more than cobwebs in the wind. She pressed her back against the wall, feeling the heartbeats of the city thrumming through the concrete. Each pulse echoed the fear in her mind. The memories of her training flooded back. Hours of speeches, the fire in the eyes of her commanders as they instilled loyalty into her heart. "Your life is for your country," they had roared, fists raised in defiance. But what country? What life? Every word now felt like a knife, cutting deeper into her psyche. Shirin trembled as the thought twisted inside her. Those who had died for their beliefs, did they know they were dying for a facade? Were they martyrs or fools? The familiar sights of Tehran felt foreign now, like a fairy tale that had turned dark. The bustling streets, once alive with the sounds of vendors and laughter, now seemed to whisper secrets. She could almost hear the mullahs chanting in the background, their voices weaving through her mind, promising heaven while leading them to hell. "Shirin," Layla's voice broke her reverie. "We need to move, please." But Shirin was caught in a tempest of thoughts. "Do you ever wonder what lies beyond this?" "What do you mean?" "The world they never told us about. What if it's beautiful? What if we were lied to about everything?" The uncertainty in the air pooled around them, thick and suffocating. Shadows loomed larger, creeping in on her sanity. Each breath felt heavy, filled with an anguish she couldn't articulate. The lies had been so comfortingly wrapped in righteousness, but now they lay bare, frayed and torn. The weight of the past gripped her heart tightly, squeezing until she could hardly breathe. "I feel like I'm losing myself," she admitted, the cracks in her facade widening. "Coda," she thought again, seeking solace that was never there. "Shirin, we'll escape. We can start anew," Layla urged, her voice trembling. "We just need to keep moving." But Shirin could barely process the words. The ground beneath them felt unstable, like quicksand ready to swallow her whole. Doubts gnawed at her insides, a relentless hunger for truth. The direct conflict between her past and present was shattering her mind. "Do you think they'll let us live? Are we just trading one prison for another?" "Don't say that. We have to keep the faith. We can't give up now." Faith. The word felt like a double-edged sword. Shirin could hear the azan echoing in her mind, a siren call of the faith she had once embraced. But what had it brought her? A life of servitude, a blind allegiance to a regime that thrived on fear. It was all so twisted, so wrong. The reality of her existence crashed over her in waves. How many nights had she lain awake, convinced of her purpose? How many times had she repeated the slogans, the chants, without questioning? The truth was splintering her from the inside, leaving her hollow. Layla's grip tightened on her hand. We can't think like this. We'll make it, I promise. But how could Shirin promise anything? Her world had crumbled, and the fragments of her beliefs lay scattered around her. The sirens were louder now, a cacophony of chaos that mirrored the turmoil in her heart. Shirin closed her eyes, the darkness behind her eyelids somehow less terrifying than the reality outside. But even there, the whispers of her doubts remained. Each question, each uncertainty, echoed louder than the sirens. The truth had become a monster, and now it was consuming her whole. "Layla," she said, voice trembling. "What if we can't escape this?" The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the weight of her shattered beliefs. The night dragged on. The shadows of the city loomed like specters, watching every move. Shirin felt the weight of their gaze, each streetlight a hollow eye probing her soul. They huddled close, an island of determination amid the sea of despair. "We need a plan, a real plan," Layla whispered, her voice barely above a breath. A soft breeze carried the scent of grilled kebabs from a nearby stall, reminding them of the life they were leaving behind. Each bite tasted of freedom, yet felt like a distant memory. Shirin nodded, her heart racing. "What do we need? Money, food, a map? Everything. We can't carry our identities with us." Layla's eyes were wide, reflecting the flickering shadows. "We have to vanish, like ghosts." The idea of disappearing sent chills down Shirin's spine. But how? They watch everything. In the darkness, the echo of the Basij patrolling the streets sent a wave of cold fear through them. Their patrols were relentless, a constant reminder of the regime's iron grip. Every corner held a potential informant. Every glance could mean life or death. "We need to gather supplies without being noticed," Layla suggested, her hands clenching into fists. "What about the bazaar?" "The one near Vanak?" Shirin replied, recalling the labyrinthine alleys filled with life. "It's too crowded. We'll attract attention." A silence hung between them, thick and oppressive. The bustling bazaar had been their refuge, but now it felt like a trap. Each colorful stall, once vibrant with laughter and trade, now seemed to whisper betrayal. "Then we go further out," Layla insisted, rubbing her arms as if to ward off the chill. "The Ekbatin district has less traffic. Old shops, dusty corners. We can blend in." Shirin could picture it. The narrow streets, the faded storefronts, the scent of spices mixing with the palpable tension. "All right, but we'll need a distraction. Something to draw them away," Layla murmured, squinting into the distance as if seeking answers in the shadows. The thought of setting off an alarm, of creating chaos, filled Shirin with terror. What if it goes wrong? "Better chaos than being caught," Layla shot back, determination hardening her voice. "We need to think like them. What would capture their attention?" Shirin swallowed hard. "A protest? They love to squash those." "No, too much risk. Besides, the Irg-C would be on us in seconds." The mention of the Irg-C sent a shiver down Shirin's spine. The thought of their cold eyes scanning the crowd, seeking out dissent, was paralyzing. "Then we could start a fire?" Layla suggested, her eyes glinting with an idea. "A fire?" Shirin felt her heart race at the thought. "How would we even—" "Listen, it's easy. A few flammable items, some oil. We create a scene. They'll think it's an accident." Shirin stared at her, disbelief mixing with admiration. "That's insane." Layla's resolve hardened. "Insanity is our only ally right now. We become shadows, remember? We work in the dark." Shirin took a deep breath, the sharp smell of smoke from a distant chimney filling her lungs. "Okay, we'll need supplies. Food, water, anything we can carry. But we need to be careful." "Right," Layla nodded. "We'll divide and conquer. I'll head to the Akbatin shops. You check the old warehouse near Vanak. We meet back here at dawn." The thought of venturing out alone filled Shirin with dread. What if something happens? Stay aware, Layla said, her voice firm. Blend in. Trust no one. As they prepared to split, Shirin felt the gravity of their situation. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, a haunting reminder of the besiegee lurking nearby. Be safe, Layla whispered, her eyes fierce. Shirin nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. As Shirin moved through the narrow streets of Vanak, the pavement felt rough beneath her feet, gritty and unforgiving. The air was thick, almost suffocating, infused with the smell of fried samosas from a nearby vendor. She felt the heat radiating off the ground, a stark contrast to the chill of her thoughts. Every sound made her flinch. A distant laugh, the rustle of a plastic bag, the crackle of a radio. Each felt like a trap, pulling her deeper into the web of their reality. The shadows shifted, creating dark patches where her fears lurked. She caught her breath, her heart pounding against her chest. At the warehouse, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Dust particles floated in the air, illuminated by a single flickering bulb. Shirin hesitated at the threshold. Inside, crates stacked precariously towered over her, filled with forgotten remnants of a different life. As she moved deeper inside, the scent of rotting wood and stale air enveloped her. She ran her fingers across the surfaces, feeling the grit beneath her nails. She could hear the faint drip of water somewhere, echoing like a clock counting down to her fate. Focus, she whispered to herself, shaking off the unease that prickled at her skin. She needed food, supplies. She rifled through the crates, her hands trembling as she searched. The sound of crumpling paper felt like a gunshot in her ears. Finally, she found a few lavash wraps, a container of gorm sabzi, and some water bottles. Every item felt like a lifeline, yet each sip of the water reminded her of how parched her soul had become under the regime's weight. They would have to ration everything. Turning to leave, she heard a noise beyond the door. Voices, low and conspiratorial. Her heart raced as she pressed her back against the wall, straining to hear. Did you see the defectors? A man asked, his voice thick with authority. Yeah, they're getting bolder, another replied. We can't let them get too far. Shirin's breath quickened. Her escape depended on their ignorance. She crept back into the shadows, her heart pounding like a drum. Well, we have eyes everywhere. They can't hide forever, the man said, his words laced with menace. Shirin closed her eyes, the darkness around her an embrace, a cold reality. But the screams of the past echoed in her mind. She had to keep moving. She slipped through the door, the cool air hitting her face like a splash of cold water. The streets outside felt alive, but they also felt like a cage. She hurried back toward their meeting point, each step a battle against the fear that threatened to consume her. As dawn approached, the sky shifted from black to a deep indigo. The faintest hint of light peeked through, painting everything with soft pastel hues. The city felt different in the early morning. The air was fresh, but it carried an undercurrent of danger. Shirin's heart was a thunderstorm in her chest. She arrived back at their rendezvous, the anticipation tightening her throat. But Layla wasn't there yet. The weight of worry settled on her shoulders, dragging her down. Minutes passed like hours. Every sound made her jump. What if Layla had been caught? What if they both had to abandon this plan? But then, she saw Layla emerging from the shadows, her face flushed with excitement and a hint of fear. I got everything, she exclaimed, clutching a bulging bag. The relief washed over Shirin, cooling the fire of anxiety. You did? Yeah, I found some donuts, a few bottles of water, and some more wraps. Good, we can survive on this for a bit. But the question still lingered like a haunting echo. Would it really be enough for what lay ahead? Would they truly escape this life? The uncertainty hung heavy, a constant reminder of the stakes. As they packed their meager supplies away, their eyes met. A wordless promise passed between them. No more second-guessing, no more looking back. They had chosen this path. They would see it through. But the reality of their escape still loomed, an insurmountable wall yet to be scaled. And as they prepared to step into the unknown, fear merged with an exhilarating taste of hope. The hour was now a heavy fog, pressing down on them. Each moment felt stretched, like the thin fabric of their hope. They slipped into the cold, dark alleyways of Vanak, where shadows clung to the corners like whispered secrets. Shirin led, her senses heightened. The air tasted metallic, a warning of the dangers lurking ahead. "Stay close," she whispered. Layla nodded, her breath visible in the frosty air. They could see their breaths, white clouds against the darkness. Every sound echoed ominously, the scuttling of a rat, the distant hum of a motorcycle, the soft rustle of leaves. They moved quietly, as if the very ground might betray them. The border lay ahead, a stretch of unforgiving terrain watched over by guards, their uniforms dark against the starlit sky. The IRGC had eyes everywhere. Shirin felt her heart pounding in rhythm with their footsteps. There was no turning back. "Can you hear them?" Layla whispered, her voice trembling. Shirin strained her ears. Yes, the low voices of the guards filtering through the night air, punctuated by laughter. She swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter on her tongue. "We wait for the shift change," she replied, her voice steady, though her insides churned with anxiety. Minutes crawled by, each second an eternity. They crouched behind a dumpster, the cold metal biting into their skin. The smell of waste mingled with the crisp air, a reminder of how grim their situation truly was. "Why did we choose this?" Layla asked, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Because we deserve more," Shirin replied, determination echoing in her voice. "We deserve to live free." And then, it happened. The guards shifted, badges glinting under scattered streetlights. They moved like clockwork, the monotony of their routine a lullaby for the restless. Shirin felt the tension melt slightly. This was their moment. "Now," she commanded. They sprang into action, sprinting across the open space. The chill of the night wind whipped against their faces, a sharp reminder of what lay behind them. They hugged the ground, low and silent, hearts thudding like war drums. The checkpoint loomed closer, a crude barricade of coils and barbed wire. Shirin's muscles strained with each step. They could hear the guards now, their voices low but growing closer. A surge of adrenaline propelled them forward. "Stay behind me," Shirin urged, her mind racing. She spotted the guard's flashlight flickering in the distance. They had to think fast. "Stick to the plan," she added, her voice firm. Layla nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. The guards were distracted, their attention caught by a commotion further down the road. A fight had broken out. A young man was yelling, perhaps trying to escape himself. It was chaos. A beautiful chaos. "Go, go!" Shirin whispered, pushing Layla ahead. They dashed toward the checkpoint, hearts racing. As they reached the first barrier, Shirin felt the roughness of the wall beneath her fingers. The cold concrete was a stark contrast to the warmth pooling in her chest, a mixture of fear and hope. "Wait here," she instructed, crouching down. Layla's eyes were wide, fear etched across her face. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Shirin peeked around the corner, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The guards were still distracted. She could hear their laughter, the clinking of their keys. She felt her heart race, the thrill of possibility urging her forward. "Okay, we can do this," she whispered to herself, letting out a deep breath. She turned back to Layla. "When I say go, we run. No hesitation." Layla's face tightened in resolve. "I'm ready." Waiting felt like an eternity. The air grew colder, wrapping them in a blanket of fear. Shirin's hands trembled as she counted in her mind, her heart echoing the seconds that passed. And then, "Now!" They dashed toward the second barrier, adrenaline blurring the edges of their vision. Shirin's heart hammered in her chest, the sound muffling the world around them. She focused on the goal. Freedom lay just beyond those walls. "Stop!" A voice thundered from behind them. Panic surged through Shirin. She glanced back, the guard's flashlight beam cutting through the darkness like a blade. "Run!" she shouted, pushing Layla ahead. They sprinted, lungs burning, the chill of the night air thickening around them. The checkpoint loomed ahead, a fierce puzzle of wires and guards. They could see the path they needed to take, but would they make it? The shouts behind them were like thunder, chasing them into the night. "Layla, keep going!" Shirin cried, her voice strained. They zigzagged, ducking behind crates, their movements frantic. The guards' footsteps resonated in the cool air. Shirin's thoughts raced. Just a bit further. They reached the barbed wire, its sharp edges reflecting the moonlight. Shirin crouched low, ripping off her jacket. "Use this to crawl through." "Are you sure?" Layla's voice wavered. "Trust me," Shirin insisted, her heart pounding in sync with their resolve. They squeezed through, the wire snagging at their clothes, the cold biting into their skin. Shirin felt the sharpness of the barbs, but she pushed through. They were almost there. "Come on," Layla urged, tears streaming down her cheeks. They emerged on the other side, breathless and terrified. The guards were now aware, their shouts echoing in the night. They sprinted toward the darkness, the shadows swallowing them whole. "Keep moving! Don't look back!" Shirin urged, adrenaline propelling them forward. They crossed a small field, the ground rough beneath their feet. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the promise of freedom. "We can do this," Shirin said, her heart racing. The distant sound of sirens filled the air, but they pressed on, fear igniting their will. Every step felt like a victory, the taste of liberation tantalizingly close. And then, as they broke through the tree line, they could see it, the border, a thin line of hope stretching before them. Just a little further, Shirin breathed, her body aching with the effort. With one final push, they crossed into unknown territory, where freedom awaited, trembling on the horizon. They stumbled forward, the weight of their escape crashing down around them. The ground shifted beneath their feet, no longer the familiar soil of Tehran, but soft, welcoming earth. Shirin fell to her knees. The world around her faded into a vague blur. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale thick with the scent of pine and freedom. "Layla?" she gasped, uncertainty intertwining with disbelief. "I'm here," came the shaky reply, a tremor lacing Layla's voice. Shirin felt the damp earth beneath her fingers, cool and unyielding. Tears streamed down her cheeks, hot and real, a stark contrast to the cold air. She couldn't comprehend the enormity of what they'd done. They were free. And then, a rush of silence enveloped them. The sounds of the night, crickets, distant rustling, broke through the haze. They were no longer prisoners. They were not shadows fleeing under the watchful eyes of the IRGC. Shirin closed her eyes, allowing the reality to wash over her. The weight of years spent in fear and the shadow of the Basij fell away. For the first time, she could inhale deeply, filling her lungs with the crisp, untainted air of a new land. "Shirin, we made it!" Layla's voice quivered, a mix of joy and disbelief. "I know," Shirin replied, her throat tight with emotion. They held each other in an embrace, a collision of warmth and tears. There was no need for words. The silence spoke volumes, echoing the victory they had fought for. Every moment spent in Evan had led to this. Every drop of sweat, every whispered plan. It all culminated in the stillness of this moment. Shirin looked up at the stars, shining brightly against the velvet sky. The vastness above felt liberating. She felt weightless, as if she could reach out and touch the constellations. Each twinkle was a reminder that they had escaped the suffocating darkness of oppression. "Can you hear that?" Layla asked, her eyes wide with wonder. The sounds of distant laughter floated through the air. It was foreign, yet beautiful. Shirin strained to listen, the melody of freedom ringing in her ears. She had only heard echoes of such joy in clandestine gatherings, always flanked by fear of discovery. "It's amazing," Shirin breathed, her voice trembling. They stood, swaying slightly, as the reality of their surroundings pulled them further from the past. The chill of the night air prickled their skin, a constant reminder of the dangers they had left behind. They walked a few steps forward, the earth cushioning their feet. Each step felt surreal, the tension melted away, replaced by an almost buoyant rush. They turned a corner, finding themselves in a small clearing. Moonlight flooded the area, illuminating the trees swaying gently in the breeze. "Look at the trees," Layla whispered, awe painting her features. The leaves whispered secrets in the wind, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the night in Iran. Shirin reached out and touched the rough bark of a nearby tree. Her fingertips brushed against the surface, feeling the life pulsing within it. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You tell me," Layla replied, her laughter bubbling forth, breaking the tension. Shirin couldn't help but chuckle as well, the sound reverberating in the open air. It was like a spell had been lifted. The laughter echoed, bouncing off the trees, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. "And the smells," Shirin murmured, inhaling deeply. The air was rich with the scent of pine needles and damp earth, a far cry from the sterile air of her former life. "I can smell everything." "I know," Layla responded, closing her eyes and savoring the moment. Time felt suspended as they wandered the clearing. The silence was a balm to their weary souls. They allowed themselves to bask in the newfound safety, the weight of fear no longer hovering over their heads. And then, without warning, the tears began to fall again. Shirin felt the warmth stream down her face, her body shaking with a mix of laughter and sorrow. They were no longer hiding. "I never thought we'd get here, Layla," Shirin confessed, the vulnerability spilling from her lips. "Neither did I," Layla agreed, her voice trembling. "But we did. We're free." They collapsed to the ground, the cool grass cushioning their fall. Laughter turned to sobs, joy mingling with grief. They cried for the friends left behind. The shadows of their past haunted them still, but the light was brighter now. Hours passed in the quiet comfort of the clearing. They embraced the stillness, allowing the sounds of the forest to cradle them, healing old wounds. "What do we do now?" Shirin finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Layla smiled through her tears. "We breathe. We plan. We live." Shirin nodded, feeling the warmth of hope seep into her heart. The silence of the night felt like a promise of a future unbound. As dawn broke, the first light of morning began to paint the sky. The colors danced like the laughter that echoed in their hearts. They were finally free. The days stretched into weeks, and each morning brought a delicate light that felt foreign. Shirin woke up gasping, her heart thundering in her chest. The dreams clung to her like a shadow, replaying the moments that haunted her every step. She saw her comrades again, their faces blurred but their pain sharp. They were still trapped under the veil of oppression, while she breathed freely in a world so different from the one she had known. The walls of the safe house were adorned with peeling paint, yet they echoed with a strange warmth. The scent of fresh bread wafted through the air, mingling with the bitter aroma of coffee. These smells ignited memories, bringing forth images of bustling streets in Tehran. She could almost hear the cries of street vendors, the sizzling of kebabs on the grill, and the sharp chants of protesters. "Death to the dictator!" rang in her ears, a haunting reminder of the fear she had escaped. Shirin's hands trembled as she poured her morning coffee. The steam curled upward, and she caught herself staring at it as if searching for answers. She thought of her friends still living the nightmare, while she sat in a kitchen filled with light. Guilt twisted in her gut. How could she bask in this freedom while they suffered? Each sip felt like a betrayal. On some nights, the nightmares crept back. The sound of boots marching echoed relentlessly in her mind. She could see the IRGC agents, their faces cruel and unyielding. "You think you can escape?" They seemed to taunt her. "We'll find you!" The dreams morphed into violent imagery, dragging her back to the dark corners of Evan Prison, where hope was just a flicker lost in between the walls. And then, just as the morning sun broke through her window, she would wake up in a cold sweat. The reality of her new life felt heavy on her chest, like a weight pulling her back into the depths of despair. How many others had made the same choice? How many were left behind? Shirin tried to reach out to her friends in secret. Each text felt like a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea. "Are you okay? Have you found a way?" She would send messages, her heart pounding as she hit send. But silence met her. Days turned into weeks, and the unanswered texts became a part of her daily routine. "Why do you still worry about them?" Layla asked one evening, her voice gentle yet firm. They sat on the wooden floor, surrounded by fruits and pastries from a nearby market. Shirin picked at a baklava, its sweetness too cloying. "Because they're still living in fear," she replied, her voice cracking. "I can't forget them." Layla's brow furrowed, her own guilt evident. "You're here now. This is a chance for both of us. Don't let their pain consume you." But how could she not? The images of her sister's smiles, the laughter shared in secret, it all felt like a distant memory. The laughter echoed in her ears, and then it faded, replaced by the chilling whispers of the past. Days turned into a blur of routines. The mornings felt too still, and the nights echoed with silence. Shirin often found herself staring out the window in her new neighborhood, the buildings towering above her like giants. Strange sounds filled the air, laughter, cars honking, and children playing. But it felt like a world apart, disconnected from her reality. She noticed the way people interacted. Strangers greeted each other with ease, their faces open and free. In Tehran, a smile could be a risk. Here, it seemed effortless. And yet, Shirin felt like a ghost, trapped between two worlds. She missed the closeness of her community, even if it was under the oppressive watch of the regime. Shopping became another hurdle. The markets overflowed with colors and scents that bombarded her senses. The vibrant hues of fruits and vegetables sparked memories of home. She felt dizzy, surrounded by choices. In Tehran, food was simple, but here, it overwhelmed her. She grabbed a pomegranate, the familiar shape bringing a moment of comfort. But when she reached for it, her hands shook, memories of her family's shared meals rushing back. "Do you want to go back?" Layla asked one night, her voice low. They sat on the balcony, the cool night air wrapping around them. Shirin turned, her heart racing. "Back? No. I want them to come here. I want them to be free." Silence hung between them, thick and heavy. The weight of their shared past settled once more. Shirin looked out at the stars, each one a reminder of her journey. A journey filled with pain, triumph, and loss. She thought of the possibilities that lay ahead, yet she felt so unworthy of them. And then it hit her. The survivor's guilt was a constant shadow, never leaving her side. She wanted to scream, to cry out for her friends still trapped. She was supposed to live for them, but how could she when she felt so lost? Each day became a struggle between hope for freedom and the haunting memories of her past. The laughter of children, the freedom of expression she saw around her. Was it even possible to embrace it fully? The questions lingered as she went to bed, the weight of her thoughts a heavy blanket. What if I could help them? Flashed through her mind. What if I could bring them here? But the shadows of doubt crept in, dousing her flickering hope. Days turned into months, and the guilt started to evolve. It transformed, becoming a part of her identity. She had survived, but at what cost? Would you have done the same? Tell me in the comments.